We have much more with the happy couple coming up. But first, Congress may be in a lame duck session, but Republican Congressman Mike Pence is very busy. He went on the record. Congressman, nice to see you.
Good to see you, Greta.
And welcome back. This is a wonderful, wonderful building, isn't it?
It's a beautiful and a historic building. We're standing in between the original House chamber and where the House of Representatives meets today.
Never gets old, does it?
It really never does, although I'll tell you, as a member of a rising Republican majority, my wife and I came into Statuary Hall Sunday night and greeted this huge throng of men and women who were just elected to Congress. Capitol Dome never looked better to this Republican.
All right, so now let's get down to the nuts and bolts of what you guys are doing. Now, after you get through looking at the beautiful building, you had some heavy lifting today. What did you do today? Well,
today we've introduced legislation to deal with this business called quantitative easing, QE2. There's an effort underway by the Federal Reserve to essentially print money as a means of fiscal policy. Right around the election time, the Federal Reserve announced that they were going to authorize another $600 billion to purchase bonds by the Treasury Department. And there's a real concern among millions of Americans that what we're trying to do here, however quietly, is initiate inflation and ultimately devalue the dollar and monetize the debt in the long term. My line today is that printing money is no substitute for sound fiscal policy. We ought to make sure the Fed is exclusively focused on protecting the dollar, and we ought to pursue policies here that get the economy moving again with fiscal discipline, regulatory reform, and tax relief.
Well, let me give you the flip side of that. In terms of if the Fed puts all that cash into the system and devalues our currency, it finally puts us a little bit in the game vis-a-vis China. I mean, China's had a devalued currency for a long time, and it's made the import-export so much of an imbalance that it's been very painful to the American people. Is it possible that if we did devalue our currency, that more people would be buying our products, and that would in fact help the economy?
No, in fact, initiating, that's the fascinating thing about QE2, and the troubling thing is that the Federal Reserve actually, in an effort to lower the unemployment rate, they're attempting to initiate inflation in this country. And remember, inflation is just a form of taxation. When you inflate the dollar, inflate prices, you essentially take asset value away from Americans, from their savings, from their investments. So if inflation kicks in, if we cheapen the dollar, Americans are ultimately the loser.
Let's flip the page to taxes.
Yeah.
The Bush tax cuts of 2001.
Right.
Where do you stand on that?
Well, tomorrow I'll do it in the House. Senator Jim DeMint will do it down the hallway in the Senate. We're going to introduce legislation to make all the current tax rates permanent. I know there's a lot of talk about compromise and a deal, but our position is that higher taxes won't get anybody hired. And
everybody?
Absolutely everybody. Look, and that's just a good start. I mean, let's be clear. If the current tax rates were enough to get this economy moving again, the economy would be moving. But at least let's make sure that no American faces a tax increase in January. And right now, if Congress fails to act before we adjourn, you'll see a $3.9 trillion tax increase. In more real terms, the average American family will see a tax increase of $1,500 per family. This would be the largest tax increase in American history. We're saying to create certainty, to encourage businesses to invest in ways that will create jobs and opportunities for Americans. Let's just make all the current tax rates permanent, and then let's get serious about pursuing the kind of regulatory reform, fiscal discipline, and additional tax relief that will really get the economy moving.
Is your position on taxes founded in that it will help the economy, or is it a political philosophy that people shouldn't be taxed, or people should be taxed equally no matter if you're at the high end or the low end?
Well, look, as a conservative, I believe that what you tax, you get less of. What you subsidize, you get more of. So I do believe in low marginal tax rates as a means of economic growth. But right now, this debate really is about jobs today.
So you think if we extend the tax cuts to everybody, top to bottom,
absolutely,
that will have a better effect on our economy in terms of jobs?
Yeah, and look, I think the recent election was a historic rejection of American liberalism and the Obama-Pelosi agenda on Capitol Hill. Not only the borrowing, the spending, the bailouts, the takeovers, but the higher taxes that have been passed and have been planned. The American people are rejecting all this rhetoric, class warfare. They know that about half of the Americans that file taxes above the level the president says he's willing to raise taxes are actually small business owners in the city and on the farm that are filing taxes as individuals. Again, higher taxes won't get anybody hired. Jim DeMint in the Senate and myself in the House, as well as our colleagues, are going to work to extend all the current tax rates permanently.
So I take it there's no, quote, compromise, in the sense that you say everybody gets it permanently, and you're not, there's no wiggle room in terms of the White House would like to do maybe make it a period of time, not permanently, or maybe raise the amount to $1 million or some sort of scheme like that. Are you opposed to any of that?
I really believe, in the interest of hurting families, in the interest of millions of Americans that are unemployed or underemployed, that we ought to make the current tax rates permanent.
So no wiggle room with you at all? No wiggle room with you at all?
I think there should be no compromise on ending the era of runaway spending, borrowing, and bailouts. There should be no compromise on higher taxes on any Americans. That election, it's extraordinary. We almost couldn't fit all the incoming freshmen in Statuary Hall for that dinner on Sunday night that Speaker-elect Boehner hosted. And the American people didn't just vote to change the Congress, Greta. They voted to change direction, and that includes, at very minimum, let's not raise taxes on anybody next year.
But, and I understand the way the American people voted, but as a practical matter here on Capitol Hill, there's another step to it. You've got to get people to agree. You need a certain number of votes in order to achieve something. So you may draw the line in the sand and say this is non-negotiable for you because you read the American people do not want taxes raised or whatever. But the fact is that if you want to achieve something, you may have to wheel and deal a little bit.
Well, I know.
On some issues.
Well, I understand that, and that's, the typical horse trading on Capitol Hill.
So do you expect that here?
You know what, I don't, because I think we won this argument with the American people.
So what's going to happen?
I think the American people also have a seat at the table. This isn't just about President Obama and Harry Reid and Democrats and Republicans in the House and the Senate. The American people have a seat at the table. The American people have said enough is enough. We don't want more spending. We don't want more debt. We don't want more bailouts. And we don't want more taxes.
So what happens? So you file your bill, and there's still a Democratic majority in the House. You win or lose?
Well, look, we're going to introduce the legislation in the House and the Senate tomorrow. We're going to encourage colleagues in both political parties to join us. And, I got to tell you, if anybody that didn't get the message 2 weeks ago today, who is responsible for raising taxes on Americans in the worst economy in 25 years, just might be getting the message 24 months from now. So I think all bets are off. I think we've won this argument with the American people. We ought to stand for the principle that no American should see a tax increase, extend all the current tax rates permanently, and let's have that debate and have that vote.
All right, but in terms of looking at the numbers, counting the numbers right now, you don't have that majority in the House, you don't have it in the Senate, so it doesn't look like you'll get it in the lame duck, right?
Well, it's difficult to say. I mean,
it would be unusual.
Democrats have outlined a pretty aggressive agenda for what they want to do in the lame duck. Most of it's bad ideas, but sure. Do I expect Nancy Pelosi to allow a vote on the floor to extend all the current tax rates permanently? Well, number one, if she did that, I think it would pass. Last time I checked, 38 Democrats had come out in favor of extending all the current tax relief to one degree or another. But, okay, she might not be willing to do that, but who knows? Let's have the debate. We're going to introduce the bill. If Democrats manage to adjourn and allow the average American family to face a $1,500 tax increase in January, small business owners and family farmers facing higher taxes on savings and investment and inheritance in January, we'll bring that bill right back, and we'll fight tenaciously in the House and the Senate to make sure that no American sees a tax increase and make all the current tax rates permanent. All
right. After you file it and after this has sort of percolated a little bit among the members, we come back and talk to us about it and see where we stand on this.
You bet.
All right. Thanks, sir.
Thank you, Greta.
Guilty. The breaking news exploded in Washington today. Democratic Congressman Charlie Rango found guilty by a House panel on 11 counts.